Have you ever heard about the most puzzling case that Detective James had ever faced? A series of chilling murders had descended upon the heart of London, the city's fog-shrouded streets a haunting backdrop to the horrors unfolding. Each victim, prominent members of society, met their end in the dead of night, their final moments marked by a terror that froze their faces in grim portraits of fear. Bizarre bite marks marred their necks, a chilling signature that stoked the city's dread. The whispers began to echo through the cobblestone streets, rumors of supernatural creatures stalking the city under the veil of darkness. The city was in the grip of fear, its heartbeat echoing in the eerie silence of the night. Detective James, a man known for his ability to unravel the most complex of enigmas, was called to face this new challenge. His reputation for solving cases was legendary, but this was different. This wasn't just a murder case, it was a riddle wrapped in a mystery, and it threatened to plunge the city into chaos. As James arrived at the scene of the latest murder, he could feel the tension in the air, as palpable as the fog that blanketed the city. But he was undeterred. He knew that in order to bring peace back to the city, he needed to find the killer, no matter what it took. The investigation began, the detective meticulously sifting through the evidence, interviewing witnesses, and examining the eerie crime scenes. Each piece of the puzzle led him closer to a suspect, a respected scientist known for his groundbreaking work in medicine, Dr. Henry Jekyll. With the city's fear escalating and the suspect in his sights, James steeled himself for the task ahead. He knew he was stepping into the unknown, but he was ready. This was his calling, his duty. As Detective James stepped into the foggy streets of London, the challenge of his career awaited him. Detective James began his investigations with every clue pointing to one man, Dr. Henry Jekyll. A figure of respect and renown, Dr. Jekyll was a titan in the field of medicine, a pioneer whose work was nothing short of groundbreaking. Yet the evidence was compelling, leading James on a path straight to the doctor's doorstep. The streets of London, shrouded in the cloak of night, echoed with whispers of fear as James made his way to Dr. Jekyll's residence. The doctor's home, a testament to his intellect, was as enigmatic as the man himself. It was here, in the heart of this labyrinth, that James hoped to find the answers he sought. Stepping into Dr. Jekyll's laboratory was like entering another world, a world where science, curiosity, and perhaps a touch of madness reigned supreme. Amid the clutter of test tubes, beakers, and a myriad of scientific equipment, James began his search for clues. Every object, every corner of the room held the potential to be a piece of the puzzle he was desperately trying to solve. His eyes were drawn to a hidden door, nestled away from prying eyes. A secret chamber, perhaps? With a sense of foreboding, James ventured in, his heart pounding in his chest. What secrets did this hidden room hold? Inside the secret chamber, James found a shocking secret that Dr. Jekyll had been hiding. A revelation that would not only shake the foundations of his investigation, but also send ripples across the society that held Dr. Jekyll in high regard. This was a game changer, a twist in the tale that no one, not even the astute Detective James, saw coming. As the pieces fell into place, James realized the gravity of the situation. The prime suspect was not just a respected scientist but also a man battling his own monstrous alter ego. It was a race against time, a race against an enemy that lurked in the shadows. The game was afoot and Detective James was right in the thick of it. The city of London held its breath, waiting, watching, as the detective prepared for the challenge that lay ahead. In the secret chamber, Detective James discovered the horrifying truth about Dr. Jekyll. Amidst the clutter of scientific paraphernalia, he found evidence of Dr. Jekyll's unthinkable experiments. These weren't just ordinary scientific pursuits, but rather, ventures into the unknown, the forbidden. Dr. Jekyll, a respected figure in medicine, had been conducting experiments on himself. It was a chilling revelation that sent shivers down James's spine. But the discoveries didn't stop there. The scientist, in his audacious curiosity, had created a potion, a concoction so potent that it transformed him into a monstrous alter ego, Mr. Hyde. Mr. Hyde was no ordinary man. He was a nightmare come to life, a creature birthed from the darkest recesses of the human psyche. He was the embodiment of Dr. Jekyll's suppressed desires, his hidden vices, his unexpressed anger. And he was the one behind the series of bizarre murders that had sent shockwaves through London. It was a startling revelation. The bite marks on the victims' necks, the terror etched on their faces, it all pointed to Mr. Hyde. Dr. Jekyll's monstrous creation was not just a figment of his imagination, but a real-life monster who roamed the fog-shrouded streets at night, preying on the city's prominent citizens. The more James uncovered, the more he realized the extent of Dr. Jekyll's folly. In his quest for scientific advancement, he had crossed a line. He had tampered with the very essence of his being, and unleashed a monster onto the world. He had lost control of his darker half, and now Mr. Hyde was running wild. The secret chamber was a testament to Dr. Jekyll's hubris, his reckless pursuit of knowledge without considering the consequences. It was a chilling reminder of the dangers of unchecked ambition and the monsters it can create. Dr. Jekyll had lost control of his creation, and now Mr. Hyde was running rampant in the streets of London. The city was in the grip of fear, and it was up to Detective James to put an end to the terror. Determined to stop the bloodshed, Detective James and Dr. Lanyon set a trap for the monstrous Mr. Hyde. As the cloak of night fell over the city, they lay in wait, their hearts pounding with a mix of anticipation and fear. The streets of London, usually bustling with life, were eerily quiet, as if holding its breath for the impending confrontation. Their plan was simple, yet daring. They knew Hyde was drawn to the scent of fear, so they used a pheromone concoction developed by Dr. Lanyon to lure him into their trap. But the real challenge was to subdue this monstrous alter ego without causing harm to Dr. Jekyll, the man behind the beast. As the clock struck midnight, a chilling wind swept through the streets, carrying with it a sense of dread. Then, from the shadows emerged a figure, grotesque and terrifying. Hyde was no longer a rumor, a shadowy figure of the night. He was real, and he was standing right before them. James could hardly believe his eyes. The transformation was horrifyingly astonishing. Dr. Jekyll, the respected scientist, was now Mr. Hyde, a creature driven by his basest instincts. His eyes glowed with a feral intensity, and his twisted smile revealed the same bite marks found on the victims. The ensuing struggle was fierce, a battle between man and monster. James and Dr. Lanyon fought bravely, their determination fueled by the desire to end the nightmare that had gripped the city. Hyde, however, was not an easy opponent. His strength was extraordinary, his savagery unmatched. But they were relentless. Using their wits and courage, they managed to outmaneuver Hyde, catching him off guard. James lunged forward, managing to inject a sedative into Hyde, while Dr. Lanyon restrained him. Slowly, Hyde's monstrous form began to shrink, his feral snarls fading into whimpers. Despite the danger, James and Dr. Lanyon managed to subdue Mr. Hyde and bring him into custody. Their mission was accomplished, but the night's ordeal was far from over. They still had to face the man behind the monster, and that confrontation was yet to come. Back in Dr. Jekyll's laboratory, they found the scientist waiting, his face filled with remorse. The once respected scientist, now a man torn between his dual identities, stood in the midst of his lab, surrounded by the very tools that had brought about his downfall. His voice trembled as he began to unravel the tale of his dark descent into the realm of the unknown. Driven by curiosity and a desire to explore the darker corners of the human psyche, I concocted the potion that birthed Mr. Hyde, Dr. Jekyll confessed. His voice was heavy with regret, echoing around the room filled with a myriad of strange concoctions and scientific apparatus. I wanted to indulge in my darker desires without repercussions, to live a life free of societal constraints. But I lost control. Hyde took over, becoming stronger, more dominant. As he spoke, the magnitude of his folly became painfully clear. He had gambled with the very essence of his being and lost. His experiment had not only claimed innocent lives but had also consumed him, transforming him into the very monster he had sought to control. Hyde was never separate from me, he continued, his voice barely above a whisper. He was always a part of me, a reflection of my darkest desires. I created him, and in doing so, I created a monster. Dr. Jekyll's confession served as a chilling reminder of the perils of unchecked ambition and the devastating consequences of playing God. In his quest for liberation, he had chained himself to a monster of his own making. With the confession, the authorities had what they needed. Dr. Jekyll was arrested and charged with the string of gruesome murders that had sent a wave of terror across London. His once illustrious reputation lay in ruins, his groundbreaking work in medicine overshadowed by his horrific crimes. The case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was closed, but Detective James couldn't shake off the sympathy he felt for the man who had become a monster. Despite the atrocities committed, James saw a man tormented by his own creation, a prisoner of his own ambition. The case was resolved, but the haunting echoes of Dr. Jekyll's tale would forever linger in the back of his mind.